All right, we welcome you to our latest edition of Inside the Orange, and today we are pleased to be joined by the Senior Deputy Athletics Director at Syracuse University, Herman Frazier, our guest on the show. Herm, always great to chat with you. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing extremely well, guys. I just wish it was a little sunny outside so I could have gotten a workout in this morning, but we'll just have to do with the rainy weather.
Yeah, we'll survive. The weather's been nice lately, but yeah, it's not a great one here today. We're going to get into your responsibilities at SU. I certainly want to talk about your past and your athletic endeavors, and we'll talk some Olympics as well. But I guess let's start with this. How did you come to be at Syracuse University? How did you end up here?
I was actually recruited. I was recruited by Dr. Dale Gross. I was at the time working at Temple University in Philadelphia, which happened to be my hometown. But I had worked, Steve and Paulie, on the West Coast for such a long period of time. No one ever thought I was going to come back towards the East. And so when I came back to Temple, and I was the senior director there in charge of sports, Daryl called me up and said he had an opening. He needed some help in some certain areas. Daryl and I go way back when he was the associate athletic director at USC. I was the senior associate athletic director at Arizona State. So we had worked together in the room at Pac-12 meetings, and he called me up one day and said, I need some help. I put him on hold for about 6 or 7 months. Caroline and I finally drove up to the Syracuse area, took a look at it, and then we decided to come on board. So luckily for us, we've actually been here since August of 2011.
Gross, and you coming here. So were you here and part of Syracuse joining the ACC, and maybe you could walk us through what that was like?
Yes, that was soon as I arrived. I would say shortly thereafter, we were in discussions mostly with the administration and Dr. Canner and Daryl, and the athletics department was in discussions with the former commissioner of the ACC about us joining. We put together a lot of documents as it relates to the competitiveness of our sports. We also talked about our budgets. You know, I was a former Big East person and now I'm in the ACC.
We'll get back into, Herm, kind of what you do at Syracuse University and have done, over the course of your 10, 11 years here. But I do want to go back to your days as an athlete. And when I first got to know you, I was like, wow. I was like, he won an Olympic gold medal. Like, yeah, he was fast. You were more than fast. I mean, you were one of the best in the world. You won a gold medal as part of the 4x400 meter relay team in the 1976 Olympics. You won a bronze medal individually that year as well. Take us back to your days as an athlete, and what was it like? I guess first and foremost, competing in the Olympics and winning a couple of medals for your country.
Well, what's significant and what's also crazy about that, Steve and Paulie, I did not start running track until I was a senior in high school in Philadelphia.
Wow!
And that was in 1972, and then 4 years later, I'm in the Olympics, winning a gold medal in the 4x4 relay. But more importantly, winning that bronze medal in the 400 meters, which at the time means I was ranked third in the world in that particular event. It's like a dream come true. You can't really explain that to people because so many of my peers within the U.S. and also people from other countries have been training for so long. And then along comes this little skinny kid from Philadelphia who happens to get on the podium. At the time when I was in the games, I was only a junior at Arizona State. And, you talk now about NIL. Well, I won the bronze and gold medal when I was a junior, and I returned for my senior year. And my senior year, we were able to capture the NCAA championship for Arizona State. But what all started it was my ability in 1975 to be on the Pan Am team in Mexico City that won a gold medal in the 4x4. And then when I went to the Olympic trials in 1976, out of that relay team, I was the only one who was still in college. Everybody else was post-collegiate athletes. And to represent your country, I always tell people I wasn't fortunate enough to serve our country in the armed services, in the armed forces, but to have the opportunity to represent the U.S. and have that uniform on and walk in that stadium and represent this country, there is no other feeling, guys. I can't explain that to you. And then I was fortunate to stick around for another 4 years. And then 1980, I was ranked number 1 in the world. I made the team again. That's when we boycotted. But that also started pretty much the next chapter of my life, because it was then that I joined the Olympic Committee as a spokesperson for athletes. And the thing about that is, we talk about what's going on in our country right now. The reason we did not compete in the Olympics in 1980s was because the Russians had invaded Afghanistan. So it all comes back to you.
Herm, I wanted to ask you something too. You know, for a guy like myself and Steve, who couldn't, we only run if it's an emergency. What's it? And it gives you a unique perspective because you're working with student athletes. What goes into being an Olympic athlete? How much of your day did that take, and how much of your life was spent at that time being an Olympic runner?
Well, it was pretty regimented, Paulie. Like I said, I was in school. So a daily routine for me would be to get up at 7 o'clock. I would go to class, and all my classes were between 8 a.m. and 12 noon. I would then get out of class, go home, eat lunch, take a nap, and then practice would start at 3 o'clock. And so I'd be on the track from 3 o'clock until 6 o'clock. And then 6 o'clock, I would have dinner. And then from 7 o'clock until 11 o'clock, I would study and then start all over again. That was my routine from Monday through Friday. And then we would take Friday off, and then we would compete on Saturdays.
I mean, that's dedication. And I guess, Herm, have you found that, the discipline that you learned, the regimen that you learned as an athlete, has that helped you in your professional life? I mean, did that translate once you stopped being a sprinter?
No question, Steve. If you talk to anybody who works with me, they will tell you I'm focused. They will tell you I don't panic. I think that's one of the traits that I have. When things are, when you say that crap is hitting the fan, I'm the guy who's kind of calm. But when you see me start to react to something like that, then you have a problem. I only worked with him for 1 year when he was here, Mark Coyle, when he was a director of athletics. And one of the things he said to me, he says, "You don't blink." And I don't blink. When the issue's at hand and we have to deal with whatever comes up, what's the solution?
That's a great quality to have. How much? I'm curious. We started this. You said I didn't get a workout in because it was raining today. How much do you? I mean, I know you stay active and fit. I can tell that you're active and fit. How much do you still run and work out? And how much do you partake in the physical fitness?
It's very little running. It's old man walking now. I'll get out. We live here downtown near Franklin Square, and many people will see me out walking on the creek walk. I try to get out on the weekends because that's most of the time when I have time available, and I'll try to get 5 miles. Most recently, we were back in Arizona. We have a place there, so I try to get there as much as I can. But unfortunately, I had not been able to get there since last December. And so we snuck back there over the Memorial Day holiday, and we were there for 7 days. And everybody talks about, well, it's hot. Well, the heat doesn't bother me. We go out early in the morning, like 6 a.m. And I actually went out every day when I was back there. So when we're grinding here, i.e. with men's and women's basketball in the winter, and then all the other sports that follow, and there's so much travel involved, you don't get an opportunity to get your exercise in. And so I try to double up as much as I can when sports are down.
All right, let's fast forward now back to present day and talk about your responsibilities here. You know, we all know you as, you know, I think a lot of our listeners know you as, well, he's the guy in charge of the football scheduling. Aside from that, we'll get into the football scheduling, but aside from that, give us an idea of some of the other responsibilities that you have at Syracuse University.
Well, it's kind of funny because everybody says I'm in charge of the football scheduling, but you never see my name attached to anything. Everybody else talks about it, but I am basically the internal operations of the athletics department. So I touch almost every sport. I also work closely with our CFO. I work closely with our compliance department. My office handles all the charter aircrafts for all of our teams. So football, men's and women's basketball, lacrosse, anytime any of those sports would need to travel via charter aircraft, my office handles all of those bids out with all the companies across the country. My office also handles all the bus transportation on everything that goes out. So we have it set up, Steve and Paulie, where if one of our teams get off a plane anywhere in the country, there's one company that's responsible for that transportation to get them where they have to go, hotel, competition venue, or what have you. And then we have another contract with a company here locally that then takes all of our teams to the airport, as well as anybody in what we call regional travel. And regional travel would mean bus trips to Pittsburgh or Boston or Philadelphia or Cornell or Colgate or those types of things. So my office handles all that. Any postseason competition, men's and women's basketball, I'm involved. Any postseason bowls for our football team, I'm involved. Anything with let's say neutral site games with football or basketball, I'm involved. Anything that has to do with what we call METs, that would be basketball tournaments that would be in New York City, that would be the Maui Classic, that would also include whenever we go to the Bahamas, things of that nature. And then all of the sports medicine personnel, obviously Brad Pike oversees it, but Brad Pike reported to me. Everything with the strength and conditioning area, all of those report up to my office. And anything that deals with the coaches and the day-to-day schedule of athletics, Herman Frazier's probably involved.
You know, you brought up the charter travel, and when did that become a thing for colleges, Herm? You know, for the average fan, that sounds crazy that we're flying and back when I used to fly, when I was traveling with the teams, we flew commercial. So what led to the charters? Is that a recruiting thing? Was it a safety thing? What led to that?
It's a little bit of both, Paulie. When you live in a, I guess I would call it a community like ours, and most recently, we've had enough air service where we have larger airplanes coming into the market. So therefore, with like Southwest, I guess American now has some larger flights, and Delta has that nonstop flight to Atlanta. Some of our teams, we could put on some of those aircrafts, but the issue is when you have teams as large as our soccer teams and our lacrosse teams and our football teams and those particular teams, when they have to go to some of the places in the ACC, it's not very easy to get there, and then that puts you at a competitive disadvantage. And so as I can sit here today, I can pretty much probably tell you where every aircraft that leaves Hancock Airport that has over 100 seats, where it's going. American to Charlotte, or in American down to Dallas, and so forth and so on. And so in basketball, it's a little harder because you have to have your teams arrive at those sites, and sometimes you have to leave at different times. You also have to take into consideration we are an academic institution, so therefore the student athletes need to be in class. So there's a whole lot of balls that we're struggling with and things up in the air to make it work. But it's a little bit of all the above.
All right, let's talk a little football scheduling now. And, we know these things are done years in advance. I'm just curious, if we could peel back the curtain a little bit in terms of, how many people are being consulted on this? Is there a certain philosophy? When do you decide? We know that the Penn State series was just added. There's that Tennessee game on the slate in 2025. How do you decide when to go for one of those marquee matchups versus, maybe a mid-major non-Power 5 type team, to add to your non-conference schedule? Can you kind of give us some of what goes on in those meetings to determine, how you're going to form the schedule year in and year out?
Some of those parameters are mandatory by the conference. So therefore, you have to play at least one Power 5 team every year, as mandated by the ACC, and it all kicks in as a part of our contract with our television partners. So therefore, that's why you see Purdue on the schedule this year. Notre Dame pops on there because Notre Dame is a part of the regular rotation that we have with the ACC. Now, having said that, there's certain other schools that qualify and under the Power 5. Army could qualify in many respects, and then there's other BYU can qualify in many respects. It's because of the quality of the opponent that those particular schools are. And so we actually balance that schedule. So therefore, you may see a MAC team, you may see an FCS team, then you'll see another mid-major team to go along with the other quality opponents that you have. So this year, for instance, when we signed that game with Purdue, I think that was probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And Purdue has gotten much better than they were before. And so when you look at it, it also gives us an opportunity this year, I believe, to have 7 home games. And so at a time when all of us want our football program to be successful, to have 7 home games is a feather in our cap as we try to take this team and get prepared for hopefully playing in a bowl game. And I will also say, guys, that I have games, or not I, but Syracuse University have games on the schedule, 1 or 2 or 3, as far out already as 2030, 2031.
Program is down right now. Steve and I have been in this town a long time, and we remember the glory days. But you schedule a Penn State, and it splits the fan base. Some half want big names to play, and the other half want wins. How do you balance that so that you can't always make everybody happy, though?
Well, you answered your own question. You balance it, and so you balance it because half the people love that Penn State game. Because it brings back an opponent that used to be here for many, many years with Syracuse and the Syracuse faithful here in this area, and the ones who don't want us to win the 6 games. But at the same time, also when you have a Penn State on the game, I don't have to tell you guys, it's going to bring more fans in the stands. And that's something you also have to balance as well. Inflation is amongst us right now, and prices are going up. And at the same time, we have to run an athletics program. And I think the university also wants us to make sure that we are covering our budget as best we can as well.
How do you deal with a head football coach in a situation like that when you have to explain to him, hey, we just threw Penn State on the schedule and, good luck?
Well, first of all, you guys have to understand, him and I go way back. Early on in my career, when I was the associate athletic director at Arizona State with a fine football coach by the name of John, to the Rose Bowl, and we defeated a great Michigan team when Bo Schembechler was the coach. And at the time, one of the graduate assistants on that team was a young guy by the name of Dino Babers. And so Dino and I have known each other since 1986. And he's followed my career. I've followed his career. And so that's one of those ones where it goes Coach, Penn State's in all of our best interests. John Walhack and Dino and I, we sit down and we have those conversations, and we come to a conclusion.
I was curious how much, John Wildhack's in on those discussions, Dino as well. You mentioned the MTEs, the multi-team events, when it comes to like the sport of basketball, for instance. You mentioned Hawaii, the Bahamas, going down to New York City. How does that work? Is Syracuse University approached by, various tournaments, and then you have kind of the pick, which one's the best option? Or are you actively going out, Herman, and saying, you know what, we went to the Bahamas, let's try, Hawaii in a year or two, and then you kind of feel them out? Or is it a mutual coming together, so to speak?
Fortunately, I work at a school. This is probably the best basketball school I've ever worked at. And so from that standpoint of view, everybody comes to us. Because of what Coach has built up here and the reputation of the institution, he gets emails all the time inquiring about us bringing our team. There's many Kansas City tournaments are calling me. Tournaments I believe it's a casino in Connecticut at the Sun are calling us. There's people down south who are calling us. But we get the pick of the litter because of the success of our program over the years. And the other thing is, many of these companies or these promoters, they know us. They know we're going to bring a good product there. And so we get to choose where we go. Now, you guys also have to understand, every school's not afforded the opportunity to go to the Maui Classic or Bahamas or what have you. There's only certain elite schools that go to those particular tournaments.
And how much of it, you alluded to it right there, but the fact that Orange Nation, I feel like they travel everywhere. Like anytime you see Syracuse on the road or in one of these events, there's always a great pocket of Syracuse fans, or the NCAA tournament. Syracuse travels, no matter where they are. How much does that help your job in a situation like that? The fact that you can present that to a tournament or, a bowl game, for instance, if we're talking the sport of football, that, if you pick us, we're going to have fans in seats.
Well, the operative word you just stated was bowl game. And for some particular reason, Syracuse football had lost the magic that it had as it pertains to bowl games. As you guys know, I've worn many different hats as a volunteer for different companies and different events. And one of the ones was the Fiesta Bowl. And when I was involved with the Fiesta Bowl, leading all the way up to the president in 1999, when it was the championship game between Florida State and Tennessee, we always wanted to bring Syracuse back. So when Syracuse came back, I believe one year in our Insight Bowl, they may have played Kansas State. I think they came back another time and they played Colorado. In those particular games, I was actually the liaison with Syracuse. I worked with Coach P and his staff, and we always wanted Syracuse. Now, one of the magical reasons we wanted Syracuse was because we knew that Syracuse was going to bring us the East Coast television market. And that was important for us when the bowls individually controlled the TV market, because that helped our ratings, and then that also helped us with our sponsorships that we were selling for the bowl. And I believe at that time we were the Sunkiss Fiesta Bowl, and one time we were the OS2 IBM Fiesta Bowl. But bringing those types of numbers from a television footprint standpoint of view were very, very good for us. Now let's go to basketball. Basketball, again, we travel. I mean, even when I go to Yankee Stadium and I have on a Syracuse shirt today, I guess my logo's over there, and we'll get on the subway or we'll go to Yankee Stadium and I'll wear a Syracuse shirt. People will just scream at me, "Cuse in the house, Cuse in the house." And Caroline will look at me and she say, "You freak, take that shirt off." But you're right. Everywhere you go, people recognize the institution.
I wanted to ask you, you talked about the bowl games and how important it is for the bowl side of it. How important is it for Syracuse to get to those bowl games? What does making a bowl game mean for the athletic department, just not wins and losses?
Well, you just triggered my mind there, Paulie, because it was very, very important for us when we had that 10-win season to go to Florida and participate in that Camping World Bowl. That Camping World Bowl and the status of that bowl was very important to help us with recruiting with the athletes that Coach Babers had at that time. And if you remember, we painted Orlando Syracuse orange. That bowl was so happy and they were so thankful for what we did. We sold out our allotment of tickets, which is very, very important, because the next time that we come up for a bowl, people can't say that Syracuse wasn't prepared or Syracuse didn't show up. That was very, very important for the future of our program. And that is what helps you get to the next bowl. So the next time it's between us and some other team, we can tell them what the history of our program is and what we have done.
You know, Herm, just talking to you here, I can imagine that your job is a thankless job at sometimes. As Paulie mentioned, you can't please everyone. What do you like most about your job? Is it, do you find that it's a rewarding job? What do you like about your time at Syracuse University? You said it's been a little bit over a decade. What have you liked about your time here?
Well, first of all, I've enjoyed the people. I've enjoyed the freedom and being able to work in the environment that I am. Of the school. I think also my talents have been recognized as an administrator. I don't know if you two guys know it, but the chancellor also appointed me the president of the Syracuse Stage Board of Directors. So I university, not the athletics. Then I'm involved in many other committees and also I would say committees and that deal with all sorts of things on campus, from graduation to safety to threat assessment to all sorts of things. Again, because of the many hats that I've worn, being involved with actually 6 Olympics between the summer and the winters, behind the scenes with everything that's involved with the games.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, what's the one sporting event or moment at your time at Syracuse that stuck out the most to you?
Ooh, that's a good one. Probably the Pinstripe Bowl when we played West Virginia in the snow. And that was the game, I believe Geno Smith was the quarterback for West Virginia, and Doug Marrone put together a game plan that we just wore those guys out. And I did lose a brand new pair of Kohan shoes because I wasn't ready for the snow, so they kind of got messed up. And so I remember it from that point. It cost me some money, but that was probably the best, that game. And unfortunately, I think shortly thereafter, Doug left. Is that correct? Yeah.
Down. He wanted no part of that game. Like, it was cold, it was snowing, Syracuse was playing well, making his life miserable. He wanted no part of that game.
It's funny you brought up that Fiesta Bowl. All I could think of, Syracuse beat that Colorado team that had Cordell Stewart and Michael Westbrook.
Smacked them, right?
Just crushed them.
Yeah, I was there.
A lot of great memories.
Well, and who would ever think that at that time, some years after, I'd be on the staff at Syracuse? It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's funny how things work out and everything comes full circle. I do, before we let you go, I do want to ask you about being inducted into the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. From what I read, that took place back in November of 2020. So the pandemic was going on, but what was that like to be honored in that way by your hometown?
Well, it was unfortunately it was virtual. And they still want me to come back and be a part of it. But when you look at the list of people who are on there, Steve, I was just so humbled to be mentioned with some of the names in that group. Obviously, there's some Philadelphia Phillies players who are on there, and Larry Boa, who's a good friend, he's inducted there. I believe Joe Frazier's there. I mean, there's just so many wonderful athletes coming out of the city of Philadelphia. And for me, I've been fortunate to be in the the state of Arizona Hall of Fame, the Arizona State University Hall of Fame, the Pennsylvania High School Hall of Fame, the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. And so I've been fortunate in my career as an athlete and also as an administrator.
It's been a long and storied career. Congratulations on all your success to this point, and continued success to you, Herm. And I guess lastly, before we let you go, because we're out of time, do you have any sort of message for Orange Nation listening or watching this interview, the SU fans out there? Do you have any sort of message you would like to share with them?
Well, I think we would just like to tell them that to hang in there with their school, and I think with Gary Gate and the men's lacrosse program, and what we have with Kayla and the women's program. Hopefully football gets going the way we want them to this year. Coach Boeheim has a nice new group of young men coming in, and all the other sports, and come out and enjoy some of the other Olympic sports, i.e. the men's and women's soccer programs. They're going to start getting going here pretty quickly. Many people are very, very happy with the selection of Felicia, who's coming in as the women's basketball coach. So there's a lot of things on the horizon, and go Qs.
All right, Herm. Great stuff. Thanks so much for coming on. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll catch up again soon.
Okay, guys. Take care.
All right, there he is, Herm Frazier, and that has been Inside the Orange. We'll do it again next week.